for your projects and for some of your studio assignments, it may be helpful if you don't want to go through and do a full rendering, or if you don't have the correct software on your laptop to do so. You can use some different display modes. So this will serve as an addition to some of the display mode tutorials that have already been posted. So the first one we're going to talk about here is Arctic, and then in the next tutorial we'll go a little bit over Ghosted. So if we click Arctic here, we're going to see this nice white sort of shade and shadow view pop up. This is a good alternative to something that's called ambient occlusion rendering. It's a really, really basic view. It's not super high res, but it is something that you could use as an underlay. Usually I like to do is take a screenshot of this, so the view capture to file, which is also another tutorial that we have, and we can then use this as an underlay, sometimes lowering the opacity of it. But if we don't want this to look exactly like this, we can go into our options, and if we scroll to the bottom and go to view and display modes, we can go into our Arctic view and we can see a whole bunch of options here. So we can change our background color. So if you're using a specific color on your boards, let's say you have black boards, and then you're using the image as a white image, you can do something like that. You can also set it as something like a gray. The black doesn't work super well because you can't actually see the shadows on it. For something where you're actually printing on a piece of white paper, I usually like to use white because then you don't have to put a boundary around it, and it sort of blurs where that edge is. So you can go through and test out what each one of these options looks like. It's going to change the lighting and everything that affects that. So if we change that, you see that we have an update on what the actual image looks like. And let's say we go ahead and lower that, you'll see that we start to get a lot of different effects. So our background is still totally white, but we have this object starting to change its actual properties. And so we'll see that those are different options that we can do there. Here, if we want to get into things like showing curves, showing lights, showing clipping planes, you can get into all of that here. If you actually want it to show an edge, you can up this edge number. And what that will allow you to do is actually make a sort of wireframe looking model. I actually like to leave this off and then do a make 2D over top of it usually, because that will give you a much higher res. But if you're just trying to do something quickly, you can actually turn the edge thickness on, and then depending on what resolution you're printing, you can up that in pixels in order to get that on. You can also, here, a nice thing is you can actually change your ambient color. So if you change your ambient color to something, what that will mean is that you can actually match it to something like on your boards. Like if you're using blue on your boards, you can actually change that to be a sort of blue color to match up. Here I'm just going to change it back to black. If you don't want the effects to be so severe, you can click something like gray. White obviously will not do anything, so we're going to go back to black here. So if you wanted to use this, but you didn't want to mess around with what this actual one was, or you wanted to save a new one, we can click our main display modes up here, and then if we click on Arctic, we can actually make a copy of that, and then it'll say copy of Arctic here. If we want to change the name of that, we can rename it here. So copy of Arctic, then what we can do is we can change, let's say we want our background to be light gray for this one. Let's change it to be a little bit more extreme here. So let's change it to that. So we can see here then if we go to copy of Arctic, it will change what our background is. So you can actually make new ones of these. Specifically, this is good if you don't want all of your objects to appear the same, which we'll go over in the next tutorial where we look at ghosted views.